Good evening, and welcome to this meeting of the Common Council of the City of Huntington for September 24th. Prior to calling the business meeting to order, we'll have an invocation led by Dr. Tom Bergler with Risen Savior Church, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Christy McElhaney. Those who wish to participate may rise at this time.
Please join me as we pray. As I begin, let's take a few brief seconds to call to mind our blessings, the things and people for which we are grateful. God, we thank you for the people that you have placed in each of our lives who have invested in us over the years and brought us to where we are today. We thank you for all of the people in this community in which we live. We thank you for the people in this room who are serving our community and making it a better place where we can all enjoy a good life together. Lord, I pray that you would be with us in this meeting, those who are participating, leading, speaking, that you would guide the process for our good and for the good of the entire community of Huntington. In particular, I thank you for our council members and our mayor and all those who have invested not just in this one meeting, but in many cases years into making this community a good place to live. Thank you for this and all your blessings. We pray in your name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And with that, we will call the business meeting to order, beginning with a roll call. Christy?
Brodigan,
Present.
Chapman,
Present.
Felton,
Present.
Funk, Johnson,
Here.
Pike absent, Rensberger.
Present.
Thank you. And having established a quorum for the conducting of city business, move along to first item on the agenda this evening. We will open a public hearing regarding an unimproved alley vacation here in the city. Any members of the public here to address council regarding the alley vacation on the agenda? Seeing or hearing any members of the public here to address on the unimproved alley vacation, we will close the public hearing at this time and move along to consideration of minutes for the previous meeting of September 10th. Is there a motion to bring the minutes to the floor for consideration and adoption?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and second. Further discussion and consideration of the minutes? Not hearing any at this time, we'll call the question in favor of adoption of the minutes as presented. Christy?
Chapman,
Yes.
Felton,
Yes.
Funk,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Rensberger,
Yes.
Brodigan.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving along to reports from committees, boards, or commissions. Charlie?
I have nothing this evening, thank you.
White?
Nothing this evening.
PJ?
Nothing tonight.
Todd?
Nothing here.
Andrew?
Yes, RDC met. It was a pretty uneventful meeting. We essentially just made sure that our budget's right on schedule and that we are complying with state regulations and laws.
Dave? Okay. And next item on the agenda is petitions or comments from citizens. I've received 4 by electronic means that'll be read into the record, and then we have 3 in the room with us as well that we'll call upon to share. We'll begin with the ones that have received prior to the meeting. This is an email from Glenda Giggy at 1251 South 900 West in Andrews, Indiana. Mayor Richard Strick, just a quick opinion on the ordinance that is scheduled for a vote on Tuesday, September 24th. I am opposed to this proposed ordinance. Why would we want to encourage alcohol consumption where families are present? What kind of message are we sending children and young people as well as adults when we approve of drinking alcohol in order to have a good time or be entertained? We prosecute those who drink and drive and cause injury, and in my opinion, approval of this ordinance is, quote, adding fuel to the fire, end quote, when people can openly walk around with a drink in their hand. It sends a mixed message, especially to children. It is my understanding that there are already events that get pre-approval for the presence of alcohol during that specific event. I guess I don't understand why people need a drink in their hand to be able to have conversation, watch a program, or just visit with community members. Perhaps this would be a good time for people to get out of their comfort zone and not depend on alcohol to have a good time. Please vote to reject this ordinance. Thank you, Glenda Gigi. Also by email, Lori Plaster, 300. Also outside the city. Hi, Richard. I'm writing to illustrate my positive stance towards DORA and sending this email to you as well as a few others. We have a scheduling conflict tonight and not able to attend the meeting. As one of the owners of the former Herald Press building, we are looking forward to opening our multi-use space. It has been a tedious process with many hurdles. We get closer every day. Upon opening operations, the newsroom, our bar, restaurant, event, and co-working space, will include the sale of alcoholic beverages as well as an assortment of non-alcoholic beverages. With outdoor dining on our premises and as tourism and destination location, we're in strong support of DORA. DORA has the potential to increase revenue for our downtown businesses, encourage tourism, increase attendance to festivals and events, and encourage a more lively atmosphere in our downtown. I've been to 2 separate DORA districts, one being Lafayette, events only, and the other being New Holland, Michigan, not just events. Both of these areas were clean, respectable, and under control. Even in a college town like Lafayette, nobody was being unruly. It was perfectly enjoyable and civil, and a welcome experience to have a beer in hand while observing festivities and visiting my friends' stores downtown. Another point to bring up is that people are already drinking at festivals and events. Whether they are going into bars, going to a beer tent, walking around with spiked drinks, or going to a stash in their car, it is happening. With our business, Smiley Face Media, we film and photograph many events and have seen quite a few flasks being cautiously pulled out and put away. The camera catches it all. DORA isn't going to encourage people to drink more. It isn't going to make them become heathens in the streets. Rather, it is an opportunity to bring people together and allow us to be more open with each other. I've seen arguments against DORA that stem from the stance of being against alcohol in general. Choosing to drink or not to drink and how much to drink is a personal decision. Restaurants are still going to serve wine and bars are still going to exist. Voting against DORA because you're against drinking doesn't encourage the type of anti-alcoholism momentum that one may find ideal, rather encourages people to hide or lie about their consumption, and I find that to be more dangerous. DORA is positive for us as an opening soon business, it's positive for businesses downtown, positive for our visitors and visitors bureau, and for our city. It's positive for bringing people out in attendance, and it would be encouraging to Huntington's residents to experience an exciting change. I hope my words here are informative. Please feel free to reach out with any questions you have for myself and my team. Rick Amieva, to those whom it may concern, my name is Rick Amieva, co-owner of Herald Press Building, Smiley Face Media, and soon-to-be Newsroom Bar and Restaurant. Based on successful initiatives observed in other communities across Northeast Indiana, I believe DORA, Designated Outdoor Refreshment Area, is precisely what we need to enhance our community's appeal. With our focused efforts to attract tourism and stimulate economic growth, DORA presents a valuable opportunity to promote our region as a vacation destination, drawing visitors from outside areas. I fully support the implementation of DORA and the positive impact it will have on our community. Additionally, I've been contacted by the director of the Visitors Bureau who's spoken in support of the DORA. Now for individuals that are in attendance with us this evening. First, I have for a public meeting appearance form, we have Ann Bostel. Ann, if you want to step to the podium and state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to address council on the matter.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ann Bostel, and my address is 1132 East Tipton, Huntington. Dr. Stephen Getters was unable to attend tonight's meeting, and he asked me to read the following on his behalf. While researching DORA, I found it is a relatively new concept. The history of DORA goes back to a law passed by the Ohio General Assembly in 2015. This law amended the state's regulations on liquor, quote, to allow municipal corporations and townships with a population of more than 35,000 to create outdoor refreshment areas. The state of Indiana passed a similar law effective July 1st, 2023. Upon an online search, I also discovered there is, quote, not a substantial amount of information about crime statistics for DORAs right now. But here are some facts about alcohol outlets and crime according to the Office of Justice Programs. The Office of Justice Programs found that off-premise outlets are associated with a significant increase in domestic violence. However, on-premises outlets, such as nightclubs and restaurants, are associated with a decrease in domestic violence. Based on the Office of Justice Programs findings, coupled with inefficient information regarding the effects on Indiana communities, I urge the members of our City Council to wait for conclusive data collection demonstrating the safety of this program. Do we want to pass this now and possibly put our citizens at risk, or should we wait and see how safe it is in other communities? While it is not realistic to expect a public vote on every topic introduced to our City Council, since this program may have a direct and significant effect on our citizenry, what objections are there to allowing our citizens a vote in this matter, putting it to a vote? Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Next public meeting appearance form that I have is Sharon Metzger. Sharon, if you'd come forward and state your name and address for the record, please, and you'll have 3 minutes to address council.
My name is Sharon Metzger, and my address is 850 Polk Street, Huntington, Indiana. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I am representing my downtown business, Barenbeek Bakery, as the owner. I am also representing Huntington Main Street as the board chair. But I am specifically speaking tonight as a person who has a young family in Huntington. I visit a lot of surrounding towns to spend my money, spend my time. I have spent time in multiple Dora locations, including Hilliard, Ohio, Findlay, Ohio, and Fort Wayne, Indiana. And I am enthusiastically for creating a Dora space in our community. When I was visiting these other Dora locations, they were clean, casual, inviting, very small business focused, and encouraged going to the different businesses that were located there. Specifically, the one in Hilliard, my children continued to want to go to all the different places and buy the popsicles and the bakery items and the food items, so they were the best salespeople for those different opportunities to spend money. It was very social. There were places that we spent hours at, and they were very family friendly. If you know me, I would never put my children in an unsafe circumstance or situation. They are 4 and 10 years old. And so for me to put them in these situations on a regular basis, I consider myself a good mom. And these were not unsafe environments. They were not places that were prone to public drunkenness. Surely that happens when there's alcohol involved, but there was not rampant drunkenness happening around me. It was not unsafe for anyone in my family, including my children, and it felt very family friendly. It felt very casual. Not everyone was even drinking. I had multiple family members who were spending time with us that were not drinking. It wasn't really even the main focus. It was just an opportunity to remain in one space and have another opportunity to patronize different businesses. My husband said it well. He said it was an opportunity to float. So you kind of could get something at one location and float to a different location and patronize this business and that business while just spending some time casually in the same area. I personally see it as a catalyst for more spaces in our downtown to be casual outdoor spaces. Some of the places I went to specifically had splash pads. I'd love to see that for our downtown. And so I would encourage this council to approve the Dora space. Everywhere is doing this, and I want Huntington to not continually get behind as a community. I think we are really good at not doing that some ways, and in other ways we do stay behind, and I think it's time for us to make this step. I personally would love to see it for more than just events eventually. I'd love to see it on a more consistent basis, maybe weekends during the summer. So I don't see why we wouldn't do this. It really is unproblematic. I've gone to these places. It's just not what people are presenting. I think the people that are against this have not spent time in a Dora location. So I would encourage people who have never been to visit a place. Roanoke has one on a regular basis, so I'm in support. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Any questions for Mrs. Metzger? Okay, thank you. Last entry for public meeting appearance this evening is Sabrina Newcomb. Sabrina, if you want to step forward and state your name and address for the record, please. You have 3 minutes to address council on the matter.
Sabrina Newcomb, 1754 Sabine Street, Huntington. My family has owned Market Street for 21 years in this community. We are a bar and grill. I have put on 2 years in a row now, I have done a block party in the middle of July. We've served alcohol. We have bounce houses for the children. We have food. We have live music, karaoke. It brings people downtown. And I was here at the last meeting and listened to a bunch of people that were against it because they were worried about people being overserved or there being more crime. I can tell you that in the last 2 years, I have not had one situation in my block party. We shut down from Warren Street to Jefferson Street. It brings people down. They go to the Antiquology shop and get ice cream with their kids. The kids play in the bounce house all day. I offered for vendors to come in and sell their products this year and had several of them do that. And at no time have I had to worry about that. I had a cop that was there for the whole process of the day. But we also had added security because, I mean, just like with an outdoor event, when you come to our establishment, like, we check IDs. If you are overserved or you come in stumbling, you don't get served. Like, that's just common sense that people that own a bar and restaurant know. You don't do that. And for us, we take our customers home. We've been doing that for 21 years now. If we think they've had too much to drink, we give them a ride so that they get home safe. So I am completely for Dora, and honestly, Wabash and some of them, they have events all summer long where they do once a month, where they have everybody come in their downtown area. It brings people in. Why do we want people to go out of our community and go do these things when we can do it right downtown? We've been here for 21 years. We've rode through we went through COVID. We made it through that. So obviously we're doing something right. So I completely think that we should do the Dora, and it's no different than you taking your children to Applebee's or the winery and listening to entertainment and having a beer with your kids. Like, your kids are there. What is the difference? I don't understand. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions from council members for Sabrina? Thank you. Not being aware of any other petitions or comments from citizens this evening, we'll move along to consideration under old business, previously tabled matter, first reading 9C24. Christie?
Ordinance 9C24, this ordinance, if adopted, would establish a designated outdoor refreshment area called Dora in accordance with IC 7.1-3-31 within the city of Huntington, Indiana.
Do we need to move to pull it off the table?
There's a motion to bring it back to the floor. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and second to reopen discussion and consideration and first reading of 9C24. Before we open to general discussion with council, council is reminded that we do have Chief Boxell here to address any concerns related to public safety, Mr. Hartberg for nuances of Indiana and local ordinances around these, or Director Keplinger regarding the technicalities around the boundaries. An item that was raised in the last public meeting was, I believe by Dr. Getters, was a question around whether or not this would generate more tax revenue for the city of Huntington. That is not the case, would not generate additional tax revenue for the city of Huntington. And so I think that was the only outstanding question that we had to address from the last meeting on that item. So with that, I invite discussion and consideration by council members this evening.
I have a question for Bryn. When I was going around my precinct and asking people what they thought about it, and then I actually went to some downtown businesses, but there were a lot of them that weren't around to ask them to see, because they're the most affected by it, the downtown businesses. One of the concerns was on the sheet we have is during Heritage Days, it's from Wednesday to Saturday or Sunday or something like that, on the sheet that it has here. And they were concerned that, Yeah, it was open for all of Heritage Days. The concern they had was the amusements area with all the kids and the machines and roadies, sorry, didn't mean it. The carnival.
That's not stereotype people.
I'm just saying, I'm telling you what they told me, okay? But that was their biggest concern, is it the barrier on this side of Cherry, or does it include that area also,
So
or?
let me address and make sure everybody's clear on what I could see as being a misconception. Just because a date or event is listed on that sheet, that does not mean that that is an automatic happening. Heritage Days is an event put on by the Chamber of Commerce. It would be up to the Chamber of Commerce to do a couple of things. One, indicate for whatever period of time, whether it's the entirety or a day or 2 days or whatever, that they would like to activate the DORA. And they would have to include that in their special event application to the Board of Public Works and Safety. Then it would be up to that group, pending the board's approval, to establish whatever, the boundaries thereof. I seem to recall that coming up with Steve at the DORA meeting, and I don't want to speak for the Chamber of Commerce, but I seem to believe that his comment was he did not want the Midway to be open to that. Is that your recollection?
Well, and based on the DORA map that's been published, the Midway is outside the DORA.
Correct.
That was their concern, because I didn't know if it went across Cherry Street or just on,
Goes to the
It's, right.
okay.
Yeah, and if I might interject and speak to the date, in the back and forth with the State Alcohol and Tobacco Commission, they required us to specify to the calendar, so for Heritage Days, we had to put in specific dates around it, but that is specifically in the context, as Director Kemper alluded to, we anticipate the request would be in the form of for the Brat Tent event or for other individual events within the overall time span.
So
of
not the
Heritage
whole
Days.
place, but certain, like the beer,
Again, that would be to the discretion of those organizers,
Yes.
but the one piece we are aware of would be the Brat Tent.
okay.
Right. My take is that if an event came for an entire week and said we want to do this the entire week downtown, I think Chief Boxell may have some comments and concerns to add to that during the internal review process, because before an event makes it to the Board of Works, it gets circulated to all departments so they can provide input. We can make sure that, there's not going to be road construction during that time, everything else.
Okay, that was the big concern for the people with families, that not to have.
And ultimately, if
Yeah.
the Chamber of Commerce decides that they do not want to activate the DORA during Heritage Days, it's their event.
Okay.
Most folks have a confusion about who puts on Heritage Days. It's not the city, it's the chamber.
Okay,
I'd like to jump in here just to throw in a little more, since I served on the Board of Works for more than 13 years, which Mike Hartberg thinks might be a record. So all special event requests that require use of any city streets or anything like that come to the Board of Works, and I can assure you that the Board of Works first asks, ask Christie, have all the relevant departments seen this? Do they know about the street closures or the uses of electricity or whatever it is? And so in this case then, if DORA is an option, that would have to be part of the application, and the hours would have to be specified. The Board of Works always asks, okay, when does this event start? When does it end? Have you talked to the affected businesses in the area where you're doing it? The Board of Works will not allow a special event to happen unless the whoever's sponsoring the event has checked a lot of boxes. That's just the way it is. And so it's a good process, and I'm glad that requirement is in this ordinance, just to prevent that sort of thing. So, for example, for Sabrina, it will be easier for her, if DORA is in effect, to run her event, because right now, you have to, I was on Board of Works at the end of last year, the beginning of this year, and the guys at Wise Guys were trying to bring back the beer tent for Heritage Days for a specific time, and they were having to go through all kinds of hoops. They came to several meetings, and then I got on council and came off the Board of Works before that ever got resolved. But, they were showing up, I don't know how many times they came just to get that one thing approved. So
You're right, and to the point that Ms. Newcomb, talked about, there is a provision for doing this. All this does is streamline it and bring it to the local level. There's still, as we discussed in depth last time, still plenty of oversight by the ATC, excise, and those sort of enforcement agencies just brings it down to the local level. We've got a little bit more control.
Thank you.
I had the same thing with Mr. Johnson. I surveyed my neighborhood out there, my district, and I don't know if the people, I know the people aren't really educated on what was really going on, but I didn't have anybody in favor of it, you know. They just didn't want, they thought Heritage Days was fine. There's any constricted area there with a fence around it. They had bartenders and show your driver's license to get in.
You're talking about a brat tent, a broughton beer tent at Heritage
Exactly,
Days. Yeah.
exactly. But they're just to have people walking around all over town with beer in their hand, you know, if they was having an event down at the courthouse or whatever, they just weren't in favor of it, you know, so it's just, you know, I got to represent my people, and I had about 6 or 8 emails on my phone, and I probably contacted 15, 20 people out in my district, and it's just, they just aren't in favor of it.
Other questions or discussion by council members?
Thank you, Bren. In response to Dave's observations, mine have been somewhat in the opposite, kind of reflect what we've heard this evening with positive comments. And I think that the people I've talked to when I've explained the ordinance have been appreciative of the fact that we're taking a measured approach. We're starting slowly with specific events. We've got a tight geographic area downtown. We haven't opened it up to large areas or other areas of town. We've kept it to downtown. So when I've explained the ordinance and they appreciate going in front of the Board of Works, those sorts of things that are built into this ordinance, we met 3 times and all of this stuff was discussed and talked about, and we wanted to put forth an ordinance that was cautious, so to speak. Some ordinances we looked at, Mr. Hartberg provided us with some other ordinances that are more wide open, I would guess, for the lack of a better term. So some communities have approached it differently, but I think that our ordinance reflects the nature of the community. It's a little more conservative, and we'll see how it goes. And if it works out, maybe we can open it up to other things in the future, but we wanted to walk slowly before we did anything else. So I appreciate everybody that was on the committee and worked on this. And I also appreciate all the comments from the public on both sides. They've been very helpful in trying to understand how people feel and look at it.
Chief? I'm asking everybody that they asked me to ask. One of the other concerns that they were talking about in my district is making it harder to police. And they brought up the example of the golf cart thing died and there's still golf carts driving around town and things like that. And they just thought it would be harder for you guys to police it, you know, more manpower used in that area. Do you see any concerns like that? I mean, because you talked to other places that had it, and I know they didn't say there was anything big problem as far as the last time, but if you've got any follow-up from them since then, or do you see any problems in your department trying to make sure it doesn't become a problem downtown?
I would say I haven't had any follow-up or conversation with the other cities. Much like we talked about the last time, to me, in my mind, in our perspective as law enforcement, it depends on the event. It just depends on the number of people, right? There's a large event that brings in a lot of people, then we've got to respond to that accordingly to have the right ratio that we can serve that. Could alcohol potentially be a problem? Alcohol can be a problem at any time.
Right.
Like I mentioned last time, I mean, I joked about it, but it was true. I mean, we used to see some very serious fights that would go on at one bar in particular, and others as well, but, you know, that can happen. Sure. Obviously, Drinking alcohol in excess changes people's judgment. We all know that.
Mhm.
It can cause issues, and they can speak to that as well as anyone. But do I foresee that this is going to cause us extra work and extra issue? No. What I like about it, and I mentioned this the last time, is, and Charlie just spoke to it, it's a very limited ordinance that gives access on very limited occasions. And I think that that's a very good start of, the baby step approach that I like to take, getting our feet wet and see where that takes us before we expand on it anymore.
Thank you.
I think on top of that, part of the policing aspect falls on us as bar owners or business owners that are going to serve Dora cups if it's approved. I mean, we have laws to follow, like I said before. We have to follow excise laws. We have to follow our own rules and judgments. So that falls on us too. And it doesn't just fall on the police force. I mean, we've got to be responsible for ourselves. I'm talking as a business owner right now. I also think that people aren't realizing the growth that this could potentially bring to downtown Huntington. There have been communities in Ohio that have flourished from this. Businesses that have put out park benches out on their sidewalk just to allow people to be comfortable while they're out hanging out with their kids and having a drink or whatever. As a bar owner in Huntington, we are already looked down upon by the community. And I am not surprised with the negative comments that we have gotten about this due to alcohol just being the issue, or alcohol being the topic. But I think at the end of the day, like I said last meeting, this is all a social event. This brings people out. It brings people out to talk, anything and everything. Like, that social event is what people need. And coming to downtown Huntington, going to a bar and getting a beer in a 16-ounce plastic cup and go and take a walk. People will enjoy that and people will love it. And I think it's something that we need in downtown Huntington.
Yeah, I think that this door plan, is one example of what was listed in our master plan that was just conducted not too long ago. Additionally, in that plan, thanks, Chief. And additionally to that plan, it's also highly recommended for riverfront development and event-based development. And I firmly believe that this might be the starting point to jumpstart those projects and downtown development flourish, especially on the river and the south side of town.
Further question or comment by council members? Not hearing any at this time, we'll call the question then on first reading 9C24 for approval as presented to council. Christie?
Felton,
Yes.
Funk,
No.
Johnson,
No.
Rensberger,
Yes.
Brodigan,
Yes.
Chapman.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving along to consideration of new business, we have first reading of ordinance 17C24. Christie?
Ordinance 17C24. This ordinance, if adopted, would vacate an alley right-of-way located northwest of Hannah, formerly Milligan Street, east of Klein Street, south of Tracy Street, all within the city of Huntington.
Is there a motion to bring this to the floor for consideration and adoption on first reading?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Director Keplinger.
I could do a lot of things. Sitting up here would be one of them. The petition before you tonight is for a 14-foot wide unimproved alley located at the southern end of Hannah Street. Basically, if you've been out that way, you'll know the city is doing a sewer project. There's going to be a new home built on in that particular area. The person who is going to be constructing that home owns the parcel both to the north and to the south. So far, that parcel to the north was, as of a month ago, 4 individual plotted lots. They have combined them for the purposes of building. When they were going through that combination process at the courthouse, the auditor's office recognized that there was actually a platted alley in between there, and so because the north parcel and the south parcel were not contiguous, they could not combine all of them into one. So we helped them research that at the courthouse, figured out that that alley had never been vacated, that it was still there, and so then I believe upon informing them of that, they made application with the clerk treasurer's office to vacate that unimproved right-of-way.
So you haven't paved that one yet? You haven't paved that alley yet then?
Adam has never paved that alley,
Okay.
I don't think so.
There's no utility lines or anything on that alleyway?
Christie would be able to speak to whether or not any of the utilities have signed off or not.
Sorry, all of the utilities signed off.
And I believe all departments signed off as well, and
And all
nobody
departments.
indicated any easements to be retained for anything.
They reserved easement rights. The outside utilities reserved easement.
Somebody did ask for that.
AT&T. All those are big.
Okay. So what we will do is, I don't think I wrote that into the ordinance, so we will bring a revised copy based on that into the next one, but subject to that change. I'm sorry, I wasn't aware of that.
So as far as matter of procedure, we can adopt as is. We'll bring a revised version of second reading if council proceeds with it.
Correct.
Further question or comment on ordinance 17C24?
Does it need to be done so,
No.
as they're putting the sewer and stuff out?
Adam's going to be longer than your next meeting. Sewer don't go that quick.
Further question or comment regarding ordinance 17C24? Not hearing any this time, we'll call for approval and first reading of ordinance 17C24.
Funk,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Rensberger,
Yes.
Brottigam,
Yes.
Chapman,
Yes.
Felton.
Yes.
And as noted, we'll bring a revised ordinance back for council for second and final reading at the next meeting. Item was under miscellaneous, carrying on the conversation from last meeting's presentations for the 2025 budget, specifically changes regarding Form 1. The information that's presented to council this evening, you have two versions, one of which includes the removal of the new Capital 400 series for the Parks Department, reflecting the direction to carry that over and fund it out of seated line item, as well as a reduction in the amount appropriated for our self-funded insurance program. The other version, I believe, zeroes out all of the 400 series on the Parks Department over to seated, which I'd have to double check and see if that seated line item can handle that, but that is another item for consideration. In addition, Christie, if you could do a deep dive a little bit into the interest revenue from the city over this past year and what we're anticipating with next year.
Yes. So this year, in doing our estimates for revenue, interest revenue is one of our estimate line items, and we put $100,000 in. Based on past years, we try to be conservative, even though we've earned more than that, so that just goes into our cash balance. But, so this year, because we earned $800,000 before June or July when we were going, we've been earning almost $100,000 a month in all of our investments and our sweep and VIP accounts that we have at the bank. So we increased our revenue line item, which we can do when we do an additional appropriation, which then offsets what that additional is. We can also increase our revenue item when we receive money from doing an outside, say, security or something like that, and we have overtime, we've done that. And then we've asked for an additional to put that revenue money back into that line item that we spend it out of. So it's additional revenue. So yes, I wanted to explain that even though the percentages on the total pages, because at the top left corner, it tells you what that group of documents are based on a 4 or 5% increase and then the reductions. It's a less than $100,000 difference between a 4 and 5% if we take the capital of park out, and we're still within like 4.5% increase. And with the $800,000 that we've increased our revenues just for interest, and that's not including any other revenue that we may or may not get throughout the year that we were not anticipating, that well covers the $100,000 difference in that salary difference, which would also cover, which is the $77,000, the difference between the 4 and 5%. If we take out those. The other aspect, by reducing park capital instead of eliminating park capital and putting it all into CEDAT, the difference is $158,000. So whatever was there before, and then we increased it like $135,000. If we leave the $158,000, that $800,000 would cover that as well. Now for next year, my miscellaneous revenue for interest is estimated at $500,000 because I know that the interest rate was high, and that's why we had so much interest this year, and I know that that's subject to change drastically depending on what happens with the government and everything. So I try to be conservative anyway, because then if it is higher than what we're anticipating, then we can always increase it, and then that just helps our bottom line. But we do have that in surplus, and surplus is our cash balance. It's not like extra, but it's just our cash balance that's not budgeted. And that helps cover the budget and be for extra things like the additional appropriations. So I know that's kind of a roundabout explanation, but I don't know if that helps you determine, because these are things that we need to vote on tonight so that I can bring good numbers to you to vote on for first reading at the next meeting. So we will make motions about these changes to what we originally talked about. This is kind of like a workshop to discuss what you want to do with the numbers, so I can bring you a final number. You can still change it, obviously, when you're voting on first reading, but I want you to be able to, I want to be able to present something that is ready to sign, okay?
So as a person in college who took 3 accounting classes and got out of that major, when we do the budget, are we just taking the extra we have and putting it into a budget, or are we actually being able to save some back for big things that are coming, like a couple of things that you mentioned to me?
Right.
Because I don't want to,
You're not using
I want to give
all
everybody
of
what
that
they need,
extra.
but
Right.
I don't want to 3 or 4 years down the road say, oh, guess what, we got to raise your taxes. I don't want to do that. So, you know what, I want to give them what they need, but I don't want 3 or 4 years down the road saying, well, yeah, Todd, since you gave them all this and this and this, we didn't really save anything back, so, you know, now we got to raise taxes to, that's what I'm asking, so.
That's a valid point, but we, as a administration, are very conservative, and we're not going to put you in that position. And that's why I feel confident that what we're presenting
I got
is
what's the date today?
good. It's a good budget. It is approvable at the state level. You should feel confident that we can sustain this budget. I don't think we're asking for too much, and I think we're trying to explain or put on the table all of like the operating costs and what people need, like you just said, without, I mean, obviously if we don't have the cash, we're not gonna spend it, but we do have it, and we have been saving it for a rainy day, and we're not spending all of that. We have extra that has come that were not expecting that would help offset this. If that helps.
Okay.
Yeah, and additionally, Todd, I would just draw attention to, again, the city and being responsible stewards of tax dollars, we look ahead 5 years at anticipated capital projects, whether it's roads or equipment purchases, and then as we get closer to each of those years, we update with more revised numbers, and so this is in line with that plan and those anticipated expenditures that we've, both the ones that have already been brought to the public meetings and those that we anticipate bringing in the next several years. So it's healthy, and it's run pretty tight.
So, Christie, looking at your letter, with a 5% salary increase, do we need to cover capital projects and parks through CEDAT to make all this work, or do you think your interest income windfall, I guess I'll call it, will more than covers it? We don't need to worry about moving that into CEDAT or not?
You can do it either way. The difference would be that Park would not cover it out of their budget, so their levy would grow over the next year, so they would not be spending all of that, and so they would have more savings, which would help for the following years. But like the mayor said, if the CEDAT can cover it, the CEDAT, I don't know what all the plans are, but as far as what he's proposed out of Parks and Trails line, out of CEDAT, it can cover that, but maybe not for 5 years, obviously. We're looking at a 1 year, $200,000 expense.
Because if we use the CEDAT, it'd just be a one-time
Correct.
thing. But if we don't need to,
you have that discretion every year, right? I mean,
Right,
so
right,
it's
right,
not
right.
necessarily that it's a one-time.
Yeah.
So it's the prerogative of council the following
Right.
year.
It's whatever you decide to vote if you want. I mean, I've given you different scenarios, and then we just need to put that in your blue budget folder to vote for next time. So we can do it, we can reduce park, or we can eliminate park capital by moving it. That's.
And if we
how
do
would
that,
just
it'll
be
bring
a
the
vote.
budget more into line because it was a little bit over, correct?
Correct.
I'd rather bring it in line and then be over. Just saying.
yeah, I agree. I don't see dipping into CEDAT that small amount would cause any problems, and then it has our balance sheet looking really good for this year. So the budget will be strong. I mean, we're talking less than $100,000 out of several million, but still, we want it to be balanced.
I agree on us wanting to balance things, but what does this do for the Parks Department in the future? Like we've talked about in the past, getting more employees hired, or getting more part-time summer help hired, or what does this do for the future of the parks budget altogether? I mean, I know we're taking out the capital projects to put them into CEDAT, but I'm thinking, let's say next year something else comes down the line, and just trying to predict what it does for next year. Has anyone talked to Steve about this?
And we do have Superintendent Yoder with us here tonight if you've got specific questions for him, but.
Not a specific question, I'm just thinking about next year and what ifs.
Yeah, and Steve and I have looked at it extensively around the 400 when we talked about bringing the recommendation of transferring the increase in the 400 series over to CEDAT. Not a problem. We also looked at the possibility of reducing the mowing contract, if council will recall. which would require adding more staff and equipment, but it was determined that that wasn't the best financial decision for the city. And so we're holding fast on that at this point. And I think, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong here, but with the increases in summer seasonal help wages over recent years, you've been able to make those hires that for a couple years you struggled to fill those positions. Is that correct? Yeah, so it remains a sound operational budget, and in the case of the 400 series, we're always picking and choosing priorities each year, what we bring and look to move forward, and that's built out with public feedback as well as the Parks and Trails Master Plan and Steve and his team's experience. So I think if council moves forward with a recommendation to reduce back to this current year's capital line items in the Parks Department, transfer the balance over to seeded, or plan on paying the balance over and seeded, as well as the reduction on the insurance appropriation, that with the interest revenue projection, even as it's conservatively hedged as it is, gets you through with a budget that is not only already pre-approved by the state, but one that is sound and funded.
And PJ, the 400 line series are all capital projects anyway. I mean, it's not human resources, but it's, and in some ways, it's suitable for it to be in seated, but if we can put it in the levy and have it as part of the annual budget, I know that's preferable, but this is an interesting year.
Because capital is one-time purchases is the point, and it can be in the levy, or his levy could remain the same and not have the expenditure, so then it's saved for the following year, and then you could put capital project in that next year too, or following years. So to answer your question, it would probably, well, it would benefit him by not having the expense, but still having the levy. The higher, he would get the tax dollars, but not have to spend it this year, or for, in 26.
It's preserving the levy.
Correct. But that's also, every department doesn't spend nobody spends their whole entire budget that you guys pass. And so all of that rolls back into the cash as well. And so that helps, obviously, the next year's budgets to help fund them.
Further question or discussion from council members regarding possible ways forward on the changes to the Form 1 for the 2025 budget?
Guess I'd like to weigh in a little bit more on the 4% versus the 5% salary increase. I'd like for somebody to make the case for why 5% is preferred, other than, I can imagine city employees prefer it, but, that's just about double the current inflation rate. And so if I'm talking to a taxpayer or people I represent, and they want to ask me why it's 5% versus 4% or even 3%, what am I supposed to say? To somebody who's on Social Security who's going to get 2.6. That's my question. And I know it's not a lot of money, but it is money, not chump change. I'm also one of those people who, you can use the adjective thrifty or frugal, or I use my own description, cheapskate. So, I want to understand that better.
But we also have to keep good people. You gotta pay the people to keep them. It's easier to keep the ones you got, try to train new people, 1%, 4% to 5% was something around, what was it, Christie, $100,000, something like it, which is, we got, what, $6 million in the bank? It's just, to me, you just have to pay your people.
So my question about that is, are we losing people because we're not paying enough? I mean, that's data that would be very helpful.
Christie shaking
I
her
haven't
head
seen
yet.
it yet. Okay. Yeah. Be helpful
Well,
to-
and to clarify it for that, I think in those situations, it's folks that are moving on to a promotion somewhere else. I don't think it's for equivalent work and positions when it comes to the wages. You know, again, as we reiterated in the last meeting, you know, council, the workforce appreciates the efforts council's made in recent years to keep up with inflation, which is where we're at right now. And so that would be my request, is no reduction beyond the 3% because of inflation. Anything
Right.
above that is really, that's what your increase is, because inflation is going to eat up the difference. So, has eaten up the difference.
And I think in one of the original, or one of the earlier documents the mayor put out was that it was a 3% plus a 2% of doing good works. And the workforce has done a phenomenal job on holding insurance costs in line. Pretty amazing what they've been able to do. My understanding, the county approved their budget, or are they at 6%?
I'm not sure.
That-
I know
that's-
they've discussed around 5. I've not heard if they've gone to 6 or
Because
less.
they put 3% into perf, and then they have a rate, which is, they're gonna be, I think, 5 to 6%. We're in parity with other government in town. But I understand what you're saying, Dwight, and I don't see this all maintaining for long. It just depends on what the economy does. Because if property taxes soften, income taxes soften, then our budget will soften, and employees recognize when they're working for the government, revenues are down. Next year, it might be a 1 or 2%. But the budget as presented is balanced and provides for that.
And I would recognize on behalf of the workforce that at least half of the city's workforce has also been through seasons where there's been no raises. I mean, as I said, they recognize and appreciate the efforts that have been made.
Dwight, when I first got here, we were asking for 5% or something like that. The first year I was here, so I had Chris to go back and ask what they've got the last 5 to 7 years before that, and there was like 0, 1, 2, 0. So the first year we gave them 7. Last year we gave them 6. I fought for 5, but I was all alone. And so luckily we didn't have snow because my driveway didn't get plowed out last year because I voted against it. Just saying, no, I'm not saying you guys do that. But I also, you know, when I talk to people about what I'm doing and stuff, they say, you know, so the last 2 years we've given them 13%. And yes, it caught them up. But I would be more for the 4 than the 5 just because I'm looking down the road, and I know you guys are running a tight budget and everything, but like you said, the rate of inflation is 2.5, and 4% is a nice raise, because I don't know a lot of companies that are doing that much, especially over the last 3 years. I don't know many companies that have done, you know, and for our safety services last year, we had to beef it up just to keep them, which is understandable. But 13% for everybody else, that's pretty good for 2 years. So if they're mad at me, it's like, dude, I gave you 13%. So I actually would only give you 12. So I'll take credit for 13 because I got outvoted. So, but 4 more, talking 17, almost, you know, 20% of your pay you used to have before we started this, trying to catch them up. So I'll do 4 or 5, whatever you guys want, but I'd rather just do 4 just for the future. Nothing against the people that are here, they do a great job. But I would prefer 4 just to make sure. I know it's only $100,000, but $100,000 every year, 10 years, $1 million. So, and that could pay for something that we got to have because some things are 60 years old, right, Mayor?
Yep.
So that way we, you know, don't have to raise taxes on everybody else in the town to that are all kind of, like, people on fixed income. It's hard, you know? So I don't want to raise the rates if I don't have to. I'm still mad about that rate we had to raise because a bunch of mayors before him blew off their job, so, to fix all Tipton Street. I didn't want to do that, but we didn't have a choice, because the fines would be way worse than that 2% or whatever, 3% we raised it. So, but, yeah, I'm just trying to be responsible and still take care of our people. So that would be my recommendation, is to do the 4, just, especially now with the CEDAT, that brings us back in line. You guys moving that CEDAT money out and helping out, because other than that, we were above our budget. I don't want to do that. So.
Thanks.
Is a 5% over 4%, is that going to raise anybody's taxes?
Not this year.
You know, I mean, we're talking $100,000 at a $6 million bankroll, you know, I mean, it's just.
Trying to look ahead.
That's chicken
But
feed.
the thing is, every time you do an extra percent one year, then that moves your base up for all the subsequent years. Right, so it's not just a one-year increase, it's a base increase that carries on
Oh, I fully
forever.
understand that, but, you know.
have to amortize it.
And I'm retired, I'm one of these old farts on Social Security at 2.6%, but I don't need the money because I'm not raising a family, this, that, or the other. It makes a big difference. You know, these people here are trying to raise a family, buy a bunch of groceries. It makes a big difference, you know? And $100,000, like I say, if we was talking $1 million or something, then it'd be different, but to me, it's worth $100,000 to keep a good employee.
And Todd, to your question, we're at the max levy, which is set by the state. The real question that we're balancing here, and we're having that with the Capital Projects Fund, is weighing spending money on capital projects and operations or spending money within human resources. Because if you shift it, if you don't have it in human resources, that leaves it more for capital projects. If you do a lot of capital projects, then you may have to suffer in your human resources. That's kind of the balance we're looking at. Right now, we're right. I think we're properly balanced, so we can do 4 or 5%. I mean, I agree with Dave. I think it's worth it to reinforce the workforce and reward them. But Dwight makes a valid argument. It's something I'd want to sleep on. Anybody else have any thoughts over there on that side?
Banker?
Welcome into the fray.
No, I see both sides of the argument. As far as the pay raise specifically, take care of our employees, make sure that they do a good job. Chief Bonksel and Chief Johnson, the significant increases that you guys got last year, did that make you more competitive? Have you seen the same amount of people leaving that you did in previous years?
Yeah, so as they're coming forward, 2 things I want to note. So the 13% was just for the police department, in part driven because of the competition, because of the state police increase. I think, what was it, 20%? They jumped their bracket. And then fire received 10%, and everyone else in the workforce was 8%, which brought everyone back up to their purchasing power from 2020. So chiefs, if you could go ahead and address the question.
I would say 2 things. You know, we speak heavily on recruitment and retention in the police department. You guys have heard me say that, you know, last year we were functionally 7 officers short. At the moment, we're 2. We have 1 at the academy, 1, we have somebody that's off on light duty for an injury, work-related injury at the moment. You know, we're looking at the potential of someone retiring next year, potentially. He hasn't given us affirmative notification of that, but that would put us another officer short, and you guys know I requested an additional officer to add a canine to the department that we've been lacking for many, many years. So from a retention standpoint, I will tell you that absolutely, I feel confident to say that that significant raise helped us immensely. We are currently in our first hiring process of the year that we've conducted in 2024. We had one that ran from 2023 prior to the raise into 2024. We were able to hire just one good applicant out of that pool. We tried to hire 3, and to be quite honest with you, we had 2 that washed out in the background process, and so that put us to where we are currently. We just had our physical agility testing on Sunday. We invited 30 applicants. We had about 65 applications. We narrowed it down to 30 applicants. We invited 30. We had 12 show up. I'm not saying that there's not good candidates in there. I hope there are, but our interviews are yet to be determined, and they'll happen here next month.
Pretty much in the same position as far as that raise definitely helped us. Our problem isn't it's getting the quality of people that we want. We're actually in our second hiring process this year. The first hiring process, we only were able to move one candidate forward. Right now, he's in the final steps of this process to get on, and we've already started another one. So we have 2 open positions, actually, yeah, 2 open positions, one hopefully to get on soon, and another one that we're hoping to get out of the process. But it did help. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that more isn't going to help more, but no, we're competitive, and we just need to get good quality applicants to come, because we just can't pick anybody to do this job that we do. That's kind of where we're at with it.
Thank you, yeah. Steve, Tim, and Nate, you guys have a larger workforce as well. Like, are you guys seeing a mass exodus because of pay raises or pay rates? You can't give a speech, or you can just say yes or no. It doesn't matter, but.
Or do they just like their boss so much they're not leaving?
It was because of money. Okay.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and step to the microphone so we can capture the comments for public record and any that might be tuned in online.
I'm actively trying to hire a person on the crew. We have posted this position twice. Aren't getting good qualified candidates. We're getting ready to post it for a third time, trying to get more qualified candidate to apply. So it's really just we're getting people to apply, but we're not getting good candidates that are applying. My department's struggling.
Say on the street department, what do we hire in? That say to somebody just of.
And there you
So I'll go, I should have just got up and started talking about 10 minutes ago to put you guys all out of your misery. So, but just to kind of give you guys a little bit of background on as far as the turnover, I just put some numbers together for so far this year of what we've done. So this was as of our last meeting, September the 10th. We hadn't terminated anybody. We had 4 positions resign. We had 6 people retire, 4 firemen, 1 police officer, and then 1 city distribution employee. They all retired. We had hired 13 seasonal part-time employees, and so, you know, they all left at the end of their the summer program. So those are no longer employed. And so then what we had hired up to that time, we had hired 10 full-time employees, 12 seasonal part-time employees, 2 interns. So 23 people left, and we hired 24 of those. So that was kind of the turnover rate of what we had through September. And as they said, we have 1 utility position open, 1 firefighter, and if you guys pass and approve another firefighter, that would be 2 positions. The police department, we have 1 open, and then if you add another person, that would be 2 openings. And then if you guys pass and approve the facilities coordinator, that's adding a position, and then the forestry position, that's USDA grant monies, that would be adding a position as well. So that would be adding a total of 4 additional staff on top of the 3 staff that we currently.
And this is reflective of what we see in other municipalities across the state, the nation, and other employers as well. It's a very tight workforce right now.
And
When
so to
somebody
answer your
leaves-
The
question
10
as far as
employees we
the
hired.
salary,
What'd we hire the 10 employees in at?
wait, so the starting salary?
Yeah,
Okay, so if you're talking about utility, street department as a entry level.
hourly wage.
$24.22 an hour. That's the
Much?
top rate. $24.22.
24, 22?
Yes. And then if you are in this distribution, collection department, we also, you guys approved to add an additional monies for CDL training. If an employee gets their CDL license, and then if they get a tanker endorsement, that's an additional 50 cents on the hour as well. And so getting your CDL license, if any of you've attempted to do that, that is not an easy task.
Right.
However, the city has been able to offer in-house training for those CDL licenses versus sending them to Ivy Tech for, they're out of the office for 8 weeks, and it's an 8-hour-a-day training Monday through Friday. We've been able to do all of that training in-house, and we've had a 100% success rate with all of the new people that we've hired, so.
Do you do exit interviews when they leave then?
Say that again?
Do you do exit interviews when they leave?
Yes.
Was their excuse for leaving money for the most
For the
part?
4?
2.
Two of them said?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to know how bad a problem it is.
And
so.
what we've seen in the last 3 years, those that may have left in the last 4 years are now back working at the city, so. And I think the increases that you guys have given, I mean, that attracts them to come back as well, so.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Tim.
Oh.
I'm at net zero. Haven't lost anybody, haven't gained anybody. So it's been a good couple years. Last year at this time, we were 3 short. It is hard to find, as Annette mentioned, people with CDLs. That is something that we do in-house. They gave us a ballpark figure, $5,000 an employee. We have trained 10 employees. So that's, $50,000 that's been saved just by us doing it in-house. Nothing gained, nothing lost.
So I ask all these department heads about their retention only because, I think we finally, with the big increases we gave last year, or the council last year awarded, I think it finally put us in a good position to be competitive, and I want to kind of keep that competitive edge. Also, I think our employees do a great job, and I want to try to reward them for that when we can. And since this budget seems balanced, even at a 5%, I would be in favor of 5% personally.
Christie or Mayor, do you know what the cost of living was in 22 and 23?
As far as what a cost of living adjustment would have looked like to keep up with inflation?
Yes. Off the top of your guys' heads, do you guys remember? Or does anybody?
So
I know.
22 would have been the big spike, and I think overall in the year was something like 15 or 16. It spiked up to 22 at one point, if I remember right, and then 23, 8.6, 9. Does that sound right? On which year? Yep. Not just a hat rack. Yep.
Anybody around here buy gallons of water? You guys? Gallon of water?
Those numbers again were 15.9 in 22 and 8.7 in 23. Mike was reminding me to repeat it in for the record on the microphone. So, BJ?
Does anybody buy gallons of water for their house? Anybody? Okay. I just went back and did a little math. 2.5 years ago, a gallon of water was $1.08, and today it's $1.37. And I think per week we go through about 8 gallons of water at our house. After a while, that's going to add up significantly to people, working families. That's a 27% increase. over the last 2.5 years. Last meeting, I made the comment and the potential push for the 4%, and I revoked that and would like to stick with 5% because I'm on the side of everyone that we have deserves it. And I know that we're going off the average of cost of living, but there's certain things out there that people are really struggling on. And our employees, their families, they need supported.
PJ, you do bring up a good point that the reality is the 3% or 2.5% would be your cost of living. Everything above that is what your increase would actually be.
Right, correct. But
In
I'm
terms of
just
making up the
yes.
purchasing power.
Yes, they just continuously need supported though.
I got to come back to Brent and those numbers. What were you quoting for 2022? Inflation? That was 8%. It wasn't 15 point whatever. If we had 15.93% inflation rate, we would all remember that. I can tell you that much. There's no way it was that much. I'm just looking here. Investopedia says 8%, U.S. inflation calculator. Something could have gone up that much, like gasoline, but
Going to the grocery store, it seems like it.
I'm just telling you what I'm finding here, so. I mean, that was a lot, but
Looking at Stats Indiana,
I'm just looking at inflation. What's that? All right, well,
Dwight,
yeah.
According to Stats Indiana in 2022, per capita personal income
Yeah.
was 51.3. That's $25 an hour. So we're right at the median. Or per capita, we're right there. And median income is near 60,000. So if you take individually, we're right about normal.
Well, as we start discussing fiscal policy and Federal Reserve actions,
Charlie,
we're
do you
getting
wanna
a
do
little
4 or
bit
5?
off topic
I
there.
flunked the county.
Charlie, do you want to do 4 or 5%?
I think 5.
That's 4 people, guys. It's over. No more discussion. Don't matter. Honestly. Make a motion for 5%.
If you could make a comprehensive motion that gives guidance to the other recommendations as well, that would be appreciated.
What do you want to talk about?
So I guess I'll make the motion for the, to accept the budget with the 5% increase. I'd also like to leave the Parks 400 series into their budget.
And on the insurance appropriation, having the reduction there.
Yes.
Yes, that's the only way it works.
Doing the seat on the parks. Because the budget will be over budget.
Are you leaving all of the park capital as presented last time, or are you going with current 2024 capital, moving into 2025 capital?
2024 capital, moving into 2025. Thank you.
Is that workable?
Yes.
I
So that would
second.
be shifting the increase in 400 series over to seated. It would be the reduction in the insurance appropriation, and it reflects a 5% raise. Do I understand you correctly, Andrew?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a motion.
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion and consideration of the, second was Dave, right? Did I get that right? Okay. Discussion and consideration of the motion reflecting the 5% reduction of parks capital with shift over to seated and reduction of the insurance appropriation. Council members?
Well, I'll just say I'm going to vote against it for reasons I've already mentioned, I think, mostly, but I just don't think it's all that wise, even though it's not a lot of money, to spend more money than you really need to. The data has shown, from what we've heard, that we're not losing good people because of money. And so I'd rather save what we can for what it will be a real rainy day sooner or later, but this isn't a rainy day, so I don't think we need to spend that money. That's why I'll vote no.
Further discussion or comment by council members on the motion to amend? Not hearing any at this time, we'll call the question in favor of the motion to amend, giving direction for changes to the Form 1 that'll be brought back for council's full consideration and deliberation at the next meeting. Christie?
Johnson,
No.
Rensberger,
Yes.
Brodigan,
No.
Chapman,
Yes.
Felton,
Yes.
Funk.
Yes.
You?
With that, the motion carries. We appreciate the diligence and the direction that council's provided for this. Any other items for the good of the order this evening?
Yes, the hires part is done.
And?
I haven't played on it yet.
Did you enjoy it?
It was raining today.
Okay.
I haven't got to use it yet. It was raining today, so it was kind of wet.
Good job, Steve.
Thank you, Steve, for getting that taken care of. Anything else for the good of the order? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
You're welcome for cutting.
Do you like how I brought just a gallon of water?
Yes.
I know she